My life's routine felt as meticulously planned as a Swiss watch. I woke early, before the sun dared to rise, and my first coffee was always a solitary ritual, a steaming mug on my minimalist table in my Astoria apartment, its aroma mingling with the morning's quiet. I worked as an associate consultant at Sterling Advisory Group, one of New York's biggest firms in Midtown, where pressure and expectations clung to you like a second skin. My days were a blur of reports, meetings, and relentless deadlines. Each task I executed was meticulously calculated, a choreographed dance I performed to keep the emotional void from consuming me. I watched Serena Albright from afar. From the first day I saw her, her presence was like a lighthouse cutting through the fog. She exuded power and confidence, a CEO both revered and feared, enveloped in a halo of admiration and apprehension. The way she commanded a room with a firm voice and an unyielding stance made it clear there was no room for weakness. I often wondered how someone so strong could carry the weight of a complicated divorce and failed relationships. There was a wall around her, a fortress I had no idea how to breach. Every day, despite my efforts to maintain composure, a quiet, dangerous longing to draw closer to her grew within me. I knew it was dangerous. The disparity in our age and positions seemed an insurmountable barrier. Yet there were moments when she appeared to see beyond my title. An unexpected smile, a subtle compliment on my work. These tiny acts of humanity made me question if it might be possible somehow to let those walls crumble. That Tuesday, everything shifted. I was called in to assist with a glamorous gala the Sterling Advisory Group was hosting at the Starlight Room, an event in the heart of the Upper East Side. It was teeming with influential people, and the pressure to meet expectations felt as towering as the skyscrapers surrounding the venue. As I arranged documents, I could feel the tension in the air. The atmosphere was charged, and I had a premonition something was about to unfold. When the gala began, the glitter of lights and murmur of laughter were almost deafening. Serena looked like a star, gliding among the crowd, until suddenly, Marcus Thorne, her ex-husband, appeared. The atmosphere instantly turned oppressive, and her gaze hardened. It was then that something inside me fractured. My instinct to protect myself clashed with an impulse to help her. When she moved closer, a glint of desperation in her eyes, she pulled me near. "Pretend you're my boyfriend," she whispered, and my heart hammered against my ribs. I didn't question if it was right, or if the ethics truly mattered more than the urgent need to be by her side just then. Her words echoed in my mind as reality transformed around me. What I felt was a mix of admiration and fear, a connection I hadn't known existed, but now it became a palpable possibility. The gala became an internal battlefield. As we kept the facade for curious eyes, I felt a tension growing, a connection defying logic. A weight hung in the silence, an expectation between our forced words. I realized our mutual pretense of protection was starting to fissure the walls we'd built over time. After that tumultuous night, routine resumed, but something within me had changed. The next day, sunlight through my Astoria apartment blinds brought not comfort, but a growing restlessness. Something felt different in the air, charged with promises and fears. What happened at the gala still echoed. The way Serena looked at me, our casual hand touch, and the sense I'd entered her world, all spun me in a whirlwind of feelings. At the Sterling Advisory Group, routine was a frenzy of activity, constant pressure. Amidst calls and meetings, my thoughts incessantly strayed to Serena. Her team management, firm decision-making voice, and everyone's respect formed a portrait of admiration mixed with fear. What I knew about her was just the tip of the iceberg. In the following weeks, her presence became constant in my thoughts. I tried to convince myself it was a passing phase, but the gala's memories wouldn't leave me. In flashes, I recalled her expressions, the vulnerability in her gaze meeting her ex-husband, the strength emanating as she asserted herself. This duality intrigued me. Days passed, and an opportunity to approach Serena arose when she called me to organize a crucial board presentation. The request was an honor, but also a relief, a chance to see beyond her impenetrable facade. Working late in a nearly empty office, I appreciated every nuance of her presence. The warmth in her eyes when she praised me, her hand touching the table beside me, the tension as our hands crossed passing documents. Small gestures, like an unexpected smile, revealed a humanity I hadn't noticed before. On an afternoon when sunbeams filtered through the windows as we reviewed slides, she remarked, "You know, Ethan, it's easy to get lost in this world of numbers and results. Sometimes I wonder if all of this is truly worth it." Her words were like a punch to the gut. I hadn't expected that vulnerability. It was the first time I'd seen a fraction of her true essence, and it made me feel an impulse to open my heart as well. "I understand. Sometimes it's as if we're on a battlefield, fighting for something we don't even know if we truly want," I responded, hesitantly, but her gaze encouraged me to continue. "I feel the pressure too. The difference is that for me, it's a challenge. But you've already achieved so much, and yet you seem so distant." There was a silence, a moment when the external world disappeared. The tension that had existed between us began to dissolve, giving way to an unexpected sense of intimacy. It was as if the walls surrounding our worlds were slowly crumbling, but there was also the awareness of the chasm that separated us. Serena was a successful woman, powerful and feared. I, an underestimated associate consultant, always in the shadow of people like her. This apparent chasm was an immense barrier, and with each passing day, the feeling of inadequacy grew in my chest. How could she ever feel something for someone like me? As the weeks passed, our daily interactions became more frequent. Our glances crossed more often, and our conversations grew increasingly personal. I found myself thinking about the phrase that echoed in my mind, letting the walls fall. The idea became more appealing, but also more frightening. What would happen if I allowed myself to be vulnerable? Would it be an act of courage or pure madness? One afternoon, as we were having coffee, the topic of personal life arose. Serena spoke about her divorce, her struggle to rebuild herself after giving herself to a relationship that had weakened her. Her eyes, normally so resolute, were now heavy with a melancholy I had never perceived before. "I think I always believed that showing vulnerability is a sign of weakness," she confessed, and I listened attentively. "But at the same time, I realize I can't continue like this. I need to allow myself to feel, but it's so difficult." I wanted to tell her that fragility didn't make her less, but human. But the words wouldn't come. I just observed her, absorbing the intensity of the moment. The desire to embrace that version of her, to be the safe harbor she needed, burned within me like a flame. When she said goodbye that day, a silence hung between us. What was happening? What did it mean? And then, as she walked away, I saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Could it be that, by letting her walls fall, she might find a path not only to happiness, but to a genuine connection? At that instant, I realized I was also on the cusp of a transformation. If the life I had led until then was marked by routine and solitude, perhaps now was the time to take a chance. But how? The fear of exposure still lingered, a shadow that trailed me. Yet the light emanating from Serena encouraged me to move forward. The connection beginning to emerge between us felt like a delicate dance, a precarious balance between desire and apprehension, between the yearning to love and the dread of being hurt. What I didn't know was that in this game of emotions, both of us were about to confront the truth of our hearts. That glamorous gala, which once seemed a mere professional formality, transformed into an epiphany of what I could be. When Serena pulled me inside the Starlight Room, adrenaline pulsed through my veins. The ballroom was illuminated by shimmering chandeliers, and the murmur of conversations mingled with the soft strains of music. It was a world I'd only known from afar, and now, suddenly, I was a part of it, even if in a provisional and forced way. "Pretend you're my boyfriend," she had whispered, and the seriousness in her gaze instantly tensed me. I didn't know whether to laugh or worry, and as we navigated through the crowd, the tension between us was palpable. I tried to act naturally, but the brush of her hand on my arm made me feel as if a fire had been lit inside me. The simple contact, though merely an attempt to maintain the facade, sent my heart racing. Serena, with her resolute demeanor, was a woman of undeniable presence. Yet, looking at her in that setting, I perceived more than the powerful CEO everyone feared. There was a fragility that was beginning to unveil itself through her subtle gestures. During the gala, in a moment, we found ourselves alone in a quiet corner. She looked at me with a mix of relief and vulnerability. "Thank you for being here," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I noticed that behind her armor there was a woman who needed support, and I found myself wishing to be that person. The party wore on, and in a moment of distraction, I glanced in her direction and saw her conversing with a few people. And then Marcus Thorne made his entrance. The atmosphere shifted. The tension was palpable. He approached, and I couldn't help but notice how Serena's posture stiffened. Her gaze shuttered, and the smile she once wore as armor faltered. Her eyes, normally so decisive, were now filled with an emotion I couldn't quite place. I realized his presence was a searing reminder of Serena's complicated past, and on impulse I took her hand. "Let's get out of here," I said, and to my surprise she didn't hesitate. As we walked to a more secluded corner, I suddenly became aware that we were in the executive private bathroom, and the door closed behind us. A heavy silence settled between us, and for a moment the raw reality of the situation hit us. "Why did you do that?" she asked. A blend of surprise and gratitude in her gaze. I could feel the tension in her body, yet something in the way she looked at me began to dissolve the walls between us. "Because you deserve to be happy, and I didn't want him to hurt you again," I replied, a courage I hadn't known I possessed stirring within me. In that instant, something shifted. The connection between us was no longer about status or power, but a raw humanity. The nervous laugh that escaped us both felt like a fragile ice break. Our hands found each other again, a significant touch that seemed to convey more than 1,000 words. When our eyes met, I realized she was as adrift as I was, in a world brimming with expectations. Where vulnerability felt like a dangerous luxury, the moment unfolded without warning. Without a second thought, I leaned in, and with a soft, hesitant touch, our lips met. The kiss was tender, laden with emotions far beyond what a simple gesture could signify. It was a fusion of loneliness and hope, of pain and longing. As we pulled apart, both of us were breathless, and the undeniable reality of what had just transpired settled between us like a nascent truth. In that instant, certainties dissolved. The outside world faded, and everything I had known about her and about myself was irrevocably transforming. Serena was a brave woman, yet also entangled in her own intricate walls. I, on the other hand, saw myself as more than just an associate. I felt I could offer her a steadfast anchor, a friendship that had blossomed into something profoundly deeper. After that moment, the gala felt different. The dazzle of the lights and the murmur of conversations no longer held my attention. There was a fresh tension in the air, an unspoken anticipation hovering between us. Our interactions became more intense, more heavily laden with meaning. What had once been a simple exchange of smiles was now brimming with unvoiced promises. We left the gala together, and the cool night air enveloped us like a comforting shroud. Serena walked beside me, her head held high and a faint smile gracing her lips. It was as if, in that very moment, a piece of her had finally broken free. And simultaneously, I felt myself breaking free as well. There was something in the air that told me our lives were poised to irrevocably shift. After that night, the echo of our words and silences forged a new language between us. It was a silent dialogue that unfolded in every furtive meeting, in every message exchanged, and though we carried the considerable weight of our histories, the connection we were meticulously building felt robust enough to withstand any tempest that might loom ahead. After the gala, everything felt different between us. The connection I had forged with Serena Albright wasn't just an isolated moment. It was a pulsating emotion beneath the surface of our everyday lives. I felt that the walls we had meticulously built over time were beginning to crumble. Every exchanged message, every fleeting glance in the office deepened the sensation that we were on an uncharted yet exhilarating path. In the days that followed, our discreet lunches at small bistros became frequent. During one of these meetings in a cozy cafe, Serena looked beautiful, but there was something different in her expression, a blend of joy and apprehension. "You know this isn't easy for me," she admitted, toying with the rim of her cup. "I've never allowed myself to feel anything like this for anyone. Work has always been my priority." That confession struck me deeply. "I understand, Serena. Professional life can be a refuge, but sometimes it feels like we're running from something, doesn't it?" Her words reverberated within me, and the intensity morphed into a space of shared vulnerability. I looked into her eyes, and there was a mix of fear and hope. She looked at me again. "You entered my life in a way I didn't expect. I feel like I'm exposing myself to something that could hurt me." In that moment, I realized there was something far deeper in our relationship. It wasn't merely physical desire, but a growing emotional connection. "Life is full of risks, Serena, but I feel it's a risk worth taking with you," I said, finding courage in my own words. After that lunch, our relationship intensified. The warmth of our encounters grew stronger, and the tension between us felt almost electrical. In a quiet bar, far from the curious eyes of the office, our knees brushed, and I felt the current that shot through my body. It was a simple touch, yet loaded with meaning. The world around us seemed to fade. "Ethan, you make me feel things I didn't know I could feel again," she confessed, her voice soft, almost hesitant. "But you should know my life is complicated. There are people who won't accept this. Don't worry about what others think. What matters is what we feel," I replied, trying to dispel the insecurity that was beginning to infiltrate us. But as our relationship became more intense, the weight of the secret also grew heavier. In the office, the dynamic began to shift. I started to notice curious glances and murmurs among colleagues. The fear of being discovered tormented me. One morning, passing the meeting room, I overheard a group commenting on a circulating rumor. "They say Ms. Albright is seeing an associate. That's inappropriate." That phrase cut me like a knife. The idea that we could be the eye of a storm left me profoundly uneasy. Slowly, the pressure began to build. Serena and I spoke less during the day, and the very insecurity that once drew us together now threatened to carve fissures into what we had built. There were days she seemed distant, lost in her own thoughts, while I struggled to decipher the currents swirling beneath her composure. "Serena, are you all right?" I asked one evening, my concern a knot in my throat. "I am just thinking about all of this. What are we doing? What does this mean for us?" The tension in her voice was palpable, and I realized we weren't the only ones feeling the ripples of our connection. It means we're opening ourselves to each other, and that, I believe, is more powerful than any whisper that might surface, I replied, though my own burgeoning insecurity was already seeping into my words. Yet, the atmosphere shifted as the rumor of our relationship began to circulate. The undeniable chemistry between us was not going unnoticed, and what we were building felt beautiful, yet the thought of being exposed was terrifying. One day, as I walked down a corridor, I caught curious glances and hushed whispers. The suffocating weight of expectation was beginning to consume us. One evening, as we sat in the midnight rendezvous, the air between us grew heavy. "Ethan, I don't know if we can keep doing this. What if things go wrong? What if this affects my career?" The desperation in her voice unsettled me. She looked at me with the intensity of someone poised on the precipice of a life-altering decision. "Serena, we can't live in fear of what others might think. What we have is real, and I don't want to let go of it," I said, a knot tightening in my own stomach. It was a moment that demanded absolute honesty from me. "But if you're not ready for this, I understand, and I will respect your decision." She looked at me, tears glistening in her eyes. "It's not that I don't want to, Ethan. It's that I'm afraid of getting hurt again, of losing everything I've built." Those words cut deep. Serena's fragility was laid bare, and in that moment I saw my own reflection in her. The fear of opening up, of being vulnerable before someone, was a landscape we both knew intimately. It was that night the truth asserted itself. We knew the life we were living couldn't continue this way. We need to decide what we want. We can either live under this crushing pressure or free ourselves from it. The choice is ours, I stated, feeling the immense weight of that conversation. The tension hung in the air, dense and charged. Furtive glances passed between us, as if the answer was etched in a place we hadn't yet dared to reach. What if we do this? What if we decide to risk everything, but things don't work out? The fear was palpable, but so was the burgeoning hope. Whatever happens, I'd rather try than live in endless uncertainty. What we have is special, and I won't give up on it, I affirmed, feeling a fresh surge of courage ignite within me. The air hung heavy with uncertainty, yet an undeniable essence held our connection. As the hours passed, the tension mounted, but so did a fierce need for clarity. What did it mean to be vulnerable? What did it mean to truly love someone in a world that saw fragility not as strength? And in that moment, as silence settled between us, I knew we were on the brink of a decision that would change everything. The life we had known until then was about to be rewritten, and our only certainty was the desire to face it together, no matter what the future held. The choice was in our hands, and the path we decided to take would be our truth. After that decisive night, it was clear that Serena and I would need to act. The tension hanging over us was unsustainable, and though the fear of being exposed was still present, the desire to free ourselves from that emotional prison grew stronger each day. The choice to risk it all became not just a necessity, but a promise we made to each other. In the following days, the office routine turned into a mental battlefield. Every furtive glance, every casual comment now carried a different weight. The pressure around us seemed to increase daily. Conversations among colleagues about the supposed relationship between the CEO and an associate consultant grew more intense, and I could feel the curious stares of those around us. It was as if we were living in a bubble, but that bubble was about to burst. One morning, arriving at work, I found Serena waiting for me at the daily grind. She was visibly nervous. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low but firm. The way she looked at me, with determination in her eyes, made my heart race. "The rumors, they're spreading. We need to do something about it." I know, I replied, trying to stay calm. We can meet somewhere safer to discuss this. I don't want this to disrupt us. She agreed, and throughout the day we decided to meet later in Bryant Park, a small park near the office. The place was tranquil, with leafy trees and a gentle stream flowing in the background. It was the kind of space that would allow us privacy, away from the critical eyes of our colleagues. When I arrived at the park, the fresh breeze brushed my face. Serena was already there, looking at the ground, clearly lost in her thoughts. Seeing me, she looked up, and in her eyes was a mixture of courage and insecurity. "I don't want this to end," she said, her voice trembling. "I feel we have something true, but I don't know how to handle the pressure inside there." "Serena, we cannot let the opinions of others define us. What we have is special, and I don't want to give it up. If we have to fight, we will fight together," I said, trying to infuse hope into her gaze. A silence settled between us as the leaves danced with the wind. I knew it was a decision we had to make together, but the weight of the responsibility felt immense. "What if we decide to go public with this?" I asked cautiously. "If we're true about what we feel, people will have to accept it." She hesitated, looking toward the stream. "What if they don't accept it? What if this affects my career? I have so much to lose. And you also have so much to gain," I interrupted her more firmly. "If we don't risk it, we'll never know what we could have. Sometimes it takes courage to love and to allow yourself to be loved." The conversation grew more intense, and a wave of emotion enveloped us. Serena took a deep breath, and as the wind blew softly, she finally spoke. "You're right. We should be true. We'll go public. No more hiding, no more living in the shadow of the rumors." I felt a wave of relief and hope. It was a courageous decision, but also a terrifying one. "Then let's do it. We'll tell others, but we also need to be ready for the consequences," I said, holding her hand. The contact was powerful, as if we were sealing a pact. The days that followed were marked by preparation. We needed to be strategic about how we would go public. We opted for a discreet announcement at a team meeting, but at the same time, we wanted our relationship to be acknowledged by those who truly mattered. At the meeting, Serena called me to stand by her side as she announced our relationship. The atmosphere was tense, and the room was full of curious faces. "I thank you all for being here. I have an important announcement to make," she began, her voice firm, despite the anxiety I could feel. "Ethan and I are together. What we have is real and important, and we can no longer live in fear of what people think." A murmur ran through the room. The silence was almost deafening as colleagues assimilated the information. I looked around and saw expressions of surprise, but also some of support. My heart was racing and expectation hung in the air. When the meeting ended, I received messages of support from some colleagues, but there were also criticisms and disapproving glances from others. The weight of the reactions began to affect us. But looking at Serena, I realized her courage was strengthening mine. At home, our conversations became deeper. "Ethan, do you realize what we've done? Going public means we're ready to face anything together," she said one evening, her voice light, but loaded with meaning. "Yes, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. What we have is far more important than anyone's opinion," I replied, holding her hand. Yet the professional demands continued to bear down on our shoulders. What should have been a moment of liberation began to morph into a test of endurance. The whispers grew sharper, and the tension in the Sterling advisory corridors felt almost unbearable. One morning, while reviewing some documents, I caught snippets of hushed conversations about us. "They won't last," I heard someone say. The sting of that declaration hit me hard, but when my gaze met Serena, I saw her resolve etched deep. "We cannot let this affect us, Ethan. We are in this together," she told me, her eyes firm. And so it was. Each day brought new challenges, and despite the pressure, a newfound strength resided within us. The vulnerability we once feared was now an essential part of who we were. Serena began to peel back her layers of insecurity, and I, in turn, did the same. Conversations that were once superficial now deepened, revealing our fears, our longings, and our hopes. One late afternoon, as we walked through Bryant Park, the very place where this all began, Serena paused and took my hand. "I don't think I've ever felt so alive," she said, her smile illuminating her face. "Even with all of this, knowing we're together gives me courage." "And I wouldn't trade this for anything," I replied, the truth of those words resonating through me. The path ahead was still uncertain, but together we were ready to face any storm. The vulnerability that had once been a mark of weakness was now becoming our greatest strength, and even amidst the difficulties, we felt we were finally allowing ourselves to love completely. And so, we decided we would not only confront the criticism, but also build a future together. A future that would be shaped by the courage to be exactly who we were, regardless of external opinions. The journey was only just beginning, but we were ready for whatever came next. The days following our announcement were an emotional roller coaster. What should have been a moment of joy and liberation quickly transformed into a minefield. Reactions varied from support to scathing criticism, and we felt the oppressive weight of expectations all around us. Serena and I had made an audacious decision, but now we needed to face its repercussions. Back at the office, the atmosphere was palpably charged. Some colleagues approached to congratulate Serena, while others kept their distance, murmuring about the impropriety of our relationship. One morning, during a coffee break, I overheard a group of employees commenting, "She's jeopardizing her career for an associate. It's a terrible move." The words cut me like a blade. I took a slow breath, trying to keep their venom from piercing through me. When I entered the break room, I saw Serena in a hushed but heated discussion with one of her directors. Her expression was drawn, taut with tension. The moment she finished, I found her by the coffee machine. "How was the meeting?" I asked, attempting to keep my tone light. "Difficult," she replied, running her hands through her hair. "Some believe I'm no longer capable of leading the team, that I'm being emotional. It's so frustrating." She sighed, and I realized the criticism wasn't just from the workplace, but from a deep fear that her decision would jeopardize her career. "You're an incredible leader, Serena. What we feel for each other doesn't change that. This is our truth, and we need to stand by each other," I said, holding her hand. The touch was a quiet assurance, a reminder that together we were stronger. In the following days, the pressure didn't ease. Malicious comments simmered among colleagues, and Serena found herself needing to justify her decision at every turn. In one of those meetings, a peer directly asked, "Serena, don't you think your relationship with Ethan might harm team dynamics?" Her expression hardened, but instead of retreating, she lifted her head. "What I'm doing is personal, and it shouldn't affect my ability to lead. And incidentally, we all have lives outside of work. Vulnerability and human connection are essential for productivity and well-being," she replied, her voice firm, and I felt her fighting against a relentless tide. Yet the director seemed unyielding. "We need to be transparent with everyone. This isn't just a matter of feelings, but of perceptions." And what should have been a constructive conversation quickly morphed into a courtroom, with us on trial. I felt the immense weight of the pressure crushing down, and my heart hammered in my chest. The truth was, if we didn't make a clear, firm decision, we could lose everything. After the meeting, I found Serena in her office. She looked utterly drained. The light that once shone in her eyes, now dimmed by the relentless pressure. "What are we going to do now, Ethan? I can't let this affect my career, but I don't want to lose you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. If we need to, I can leave the company, I suggested, the thought slicing through me like a cold blade. The possibility of stepping away from her was terrifying, but the idea of watching Serena suffer was even worse. No, Ethan, I don't want you to sacrifice your career for me. That wouldn't be fair, she replied, her eyes welling with tears. We both know this isn't just about us. We need to find a way to face this together. And in that moment I realized that regardless of the external pressure, the only thing that truly mattered was what we felt for each other. We decided that instead of letting the circumstances crush us, we would use this as an opportunity to redefine our relationship and how others perceived us. In the following days, we arranged a meeting with the team to create a space where everyone could express their concerns and discuss what our relationship meant for the work environment. Instead of retreating, we chose to be transparent. The meeting was set for a Monday afternoon, and the air was thick with tension. As Serena and I walked into the room, expressions ranged from curious to wary. Serena began to speak. Thank you all for being here. We know our relationship has sparked discussions and concerns. For me, what we have is real and important, and we shouldn't let it interfere with our work. I believe that being vulnerable and authentic makes us better as a team. Her words resonated through the room, a brave and necessary truth. Then I spoke. We are here because we believe that love and human connection are fundamental in any environment. We don't want this to be a problem, but rather a point of unity. Slowly, the reactions around the table began to shift. Some people even shared their own experiences with vulnerability, and the atmosphere in the room transformed. To our quiet astonishment, many colleagues revealed themselves as supporters, and the conversation blossomed into an open, honest dialogue. Leaving that meeting, we carried a profound sense of renewal. What had once felt like an unbearable weight now resonated as a clear signal that our decision was undeniably right. The adversity we had faced, that initial corporate battlefield, only seemed to fortify our connection, and together we felt capable of facing any challenge that lay ahead, our bond a sturdy anchor. The ensuing months brought a period of intense adjustment and profound growth. We learned to navigate the whispers and overt criticisms, to carefully construct a supportive network around us, and to embrace a deeper transparency about the true meaning of vulnerability. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the office culture itself began to shift, and the once taboo conversation about love and vulnerability became a surprisingly important theme in team meetings. Serena and I stood ready to confront whatever lay ahead. Come what may, our relationship gained strength with each passing day. Thus, the journey that had begun shrouded in fear and gnawing insecurity was now transforming into a courageous love story, where vulnerability emerged not merely as a sign of strength, but as a revolutionary new way for us to live and lead together. With the passage of time, our everyday lives found a new rhythm, yet the profound connection between Serena and me deepened in ways I had never dared to imagine. What had initially blossomed from a tumultuous romance, so often shadowed by insecurity, now unfurled into a relationship built on the unshakable pillars of trust and authenticity. We learned to skillfully navigate the intricate complexities of being two professionals within the same demanding office, all while nurturing an intensely strong personal bond. There were still days when the relentless pressure of work weighed heavily upon us, a persistent shadow. But each of those moments became an unexpected opportunity to reinforce the very fabric of our relationship. Our shared lunches, often at discreet spots like the Daily Grind or Le Papillon, became sacred, safe havens where we could exchange confidences and soft laughter. I vividly recall one particular afternoon as we sat in a sun-drenched Italian cafe. Sunlight streamed through the windows, painting warm streaks across the room. and the air was thick with the comforting aromas of rich coffee and freshly baked bread. "Ethan, do you remember the first time we truly met?" Serena asked, her smile a luminous beacon against the day. "Of course it was. You were so focused, so fiercely determined, and I was just the nervous associate consultant," I replied, laughing softly. "You left me utterly speechless." She hesitated for a moment, her eyes turning serious, a familiar vulnerability surfacing, and I was so guarded, so utterly convinced that showing any weakness was a death sentence. Now everything feels different. "Yes, and that shift, Serena, that is your strength. You showed me that vulnerability can be profoundly powerful," I said, intertwining my fingers with hers across the table. Her touch, familiar and infinitely comforting, was a quiet testament to the love blossoming in my chest, growing with each passing day. But even with our fortified connection, Serena's past still cast its long shadow. On a quiet evening in her penthouse, she opened up about her deep-seated insecurities. What if all of this ends? What if the whispers and rumors resurface to tear me down again? I'm terrified this happiness is just temporary. I looked into her eyes and saw the fragile shadow of doubt flicker. "We can't control what others think, Serena, but we absolutely control how we react to it. What we have is real, and it won't be swayed by anyone's opinion." She took a deep breath, as if finally allowing herself to truly believe in the truth of my words. "You're right. I just need to remember I'm stronger now, and that we've faced this together." As the months unfolded, our relationship became a quiet example of resilience within Sterling Advisory. The team slowly adjusted to our new dynamic, and conversations about authenticity and courage became more frequent, almost a new cultural undercurrent. One day, as we returned from a meeting, a colleague approached us. "Serena, I truly admire how you've handled everything. Your courage has been inspiring to us all." Our colleague's quiet support was a profound sign we were on the right path. I was learning that even within the demanding battlefield of Sterling Advisory, there was a potent space for authenticity and trust. And with every shared step, Serena and I became stronger, together. However, the ultimate test of our union was still on the horizon. On a rainy evening, we received an invitation to the annual Catalyst for Change Gala. It was a high-stakes event where many executives and influential partners would be present. Serena hesitated, her eyes filled with a familiar apprehension. "Ethan, do you think we should really go together? I'm worried about the stairs and what it might mean for our professional image." I thought for a moment, then met her gaze with unwavering conviction. "We go together. This is our chance to show them we are a team. What we have is strong, and we shouldn't hide it." The decision was made. That night, as we stepped into the starlight room, its glittering lights seemed to mirror our unwavering determination. All eyes indeed turned to us, but instead of succumbing to the old nervousness, Serena and I exchanged a knowing smile. We walked forward, hand in hand, ready to face any judgment. And just like that, as we moved through the room, conversing with colleagues and partners, the atmosphere around us began to subtly shift. What had once felt like a precarious battlefield now slowly, beautifully, transformed into a space of quiet acceptance. When the night finally drew to a close, I looked at Serena and saw that she was more relaxed, more authentically at ease in her own skin than I had ever seen her. "Did you see how people reacted? That was liberating," she commented, joy clear on her face. "Yes, it was. We proved we're more than just rumors. We're a team, and we're here to stay," I replied, feeling a wave of warmth and love flood my heart. In that moment, I realized our journey wasn't just about facing adversity, but about the courage to love and be loved. in a world that often misunderstands the strength that comes from vulnerability. Together, we were ready to face any challenge that might arise, firm in our truth and in our love.